NBA news, The Athletic reports Kyrie Irving and the Brooklyn Nets are at an impasse. The 30-year-old has until the end of the month to pick up a player option, which is worth just under $37 million. If he opts out, he could explore free agency. And things with Kyrie, they tend to end messily. And here's what you don't know about Kyrie. Really anything. What does he think? What's he want to do? How important is the game to him? Who knows? He's obscenely talented at basketball. That we all know. Beyond that, it's kind of fluid. So when the Nets GM Sean Marks said after the Nets were swept by Boston that going forward, quote, "We're looking for guys that want to come in here and be a part of something bigger than themselves, play selfless, play team basketball, and be available," that seemed to be a pretty direct message. Now, Kyrie can get the most money with the Nets, but are they going to commit to a long-term deal? They certainly don't want to lose him after playing a total of just 44 games with Kevin Durant in the 2 seasons they've both been there, but ultimately that's not their call. Both Los Angeles teams and the other New York squad reportedly would be interested, according to The Athletic, if Irving.
As the president of the Players Union, I say happiness matters. I believe in free will, player choice. I think Kyrie's in a interesting position being in Brooklyn, having that player option, right? First of all, you said having the team allow him to opt in. I think it's up to him. Like, whether he opts in or not is up to him, and it's up to the team to figure out whether or not they want to extend him. And you have to weigh pros and cons. And you talked about trading. I think there's no way they trade Kyrie Irving. This is just like me speaking as C.J. McCollum, not as the president of PA. I think that a guy of his magnitude, his talent, Stephen A. talked about him being box office. He's legit box office.
Oh, yeah.
He hit
one of the most entertaining players in sports.
He hit the big shot to send Curry and them home. We all remember it coming back from 3-1. I think he's must-see TV.
But if he does opt out, what do you think the primary reason for that would be?
I can't speak for him, but the only reason I would see him opting out is to get a longer-term deal, which would be more than 1 year. I think he's got a year left on his deal. And generally speaking, when players opt out, they either want to become a free agent or they want to renegotiate a longer-term contract.
Legs, I want to talk to you about a little theory I have. I want you to react to it. See, in the old days when, like Michael Jordan eventually, or Larry Bird or Magic Johnson, if they had Red Auerbach or Jerry West, they had a GM. And we could evaluate the players, right? The great players. And then an era came where LeBron didn't like the job his GM was doing, and he sort of became his own GM. And now I get the sense, Legs, that when we compare the greatest of the greatest in the game today, we're also evaluating sort of their GM skills. Can they keep a team together? That sort of thing. What would it say about KD in that capacity if Kyrie leaves?
Yeah, look, I think it would be fair to question maybe, some of his leadership ability and maybe his communication skills. I mean, Kevin Durant seems like a guy that just wants to go out there and let his game speak for itself wherever he is. And obviously, he's one of the greatest players this league's ever seen. But I think in terms of the coalition and forming, what he needs to win another championship and keeping guys locked in to the moment, obviously that track record hasn't looked as good. I mean, James Harden wanted out. Now potentially Kyrie Irving might be gone as well. So I think you do question that a little bit. And as far as you mentioned, Max, like a new era, and you're right. This is not only the greatest period of player empowerment in NBA history. I think it's the greatest period of player empowerment in any league's history. When you talk about the 4 major professional sports, NBA players are the guys now that are running these organizations. It's just the way of the world, and they are tending to look at things in a much shorter term window from stop to stop. And right now, based on the results of the last couple of seasons, obviously they have come far short of expectations when these guys paired up in Brooklyn. And now it seems like it may be unraveling a little bit at the seams. It already started when James Harden wanted to leave and he ended up in Philadelphia.
CJ, how much power? I mean, I think it's a great point Legs makes. In no era, in any major American team sport, have players had this kind. Like Tom Brady's looking at James Harden going, damn, if only I had that kind of, how much power does KD have in the Nets organization, do you think, in terms of keeping Kyrie on the team if that's what KD wants?
First of all, I'm happy to see Tom in Tampa Bay. He's a better version of himself. But I think KD has as much power as a player can have within a franchise, within an organization. I'm not sure he's necessarily utilizing it the same way we've seen other stars in terms of literally constructing a roster together, but I think he definitely has a huge say. I'm sure they go up to him and ask him for his opinion on certain players, what he would like to play with, what types of compliments he would like to see around him, and obviously his intention with going to Brooklyn was to play alongside Kyrie Irving. Originally, it was to play alongside James Harden. James has obviously opted to leave. Kai is still there. There's some renderings back and forth on whether or not he'll be there. And I think this will come down to negotiation tactics, honestly, what both sides are looking for. Like, how many years is Kai looking for? Is he looking to stay long term? Is Brooklyn willing to accommodate, Kyrie and what he comes with long term in terms of him playing, his availability? Everybody talked about it, right? Like, this isn't me like making stuff up. People have talked about his availability to play. Obviously, last year was indicative of New York's rules, not the Brooklyn's rules. But I think it'll be very interesting to see what happens in free agency. I'm looking forward to seeing it. Player movement is my favorite part of the NBA
Fans
season.
too.
It's my favorite part of free agency, and seeing guys in new jerseys would be really cool.
Yeah, fans love that. The hot stove stuff, fans love it. Kyrie gives me the feeling of a guy looking for a cause to attach himself to, which might make him an admirable human being in certain ways, but as a franchise looking to plot a course for the future, might make you nervous. Like, oh, next thing's going to come along, some larger than himself issue. What if he attaches himself to that? All of a sudden, he's not on the court. I'd be a little nervous if I were a team. On the other hand, Legs, the dude is arguably the most skilled player who ever lived, and he's still in his prime. Do you see the Lakers, Knicks, or Clippers as possible landing spots for Kyrie?
Oh, absolutely. It would be ironic if he ended up again with LeBron James with the Lakers. Can you consider the fact that he had the success in Cleveland? He was obviously riding shotgun to LeBron and living in his shadow a little bit, but obviously a major part of what they did and hit the biggest shot in franchise history. But then I think decided, you know what? I'm tired of living in that shadow and I want my own team. And he realized pretty quickly in Boston that being a leader is very difficult with young talent around you. It's not just about showing up and doing your thing. You've got to empower other people to be the best version of themselves, and I don't think that really suited him well, so he went back into that shadow role in Brooklyn with Kevin Durant. It hasn't worked out, so it would be full circle if he ended up with LeBron James. That would not shock me in any way, shape, or form. I'm not sure the Knicks make as much sense to me because I think he'd be right back in that same role he was in Boston, and I don't think that's comfortable for Kyrie Irving, and even more scrutiny in that particular market. So the Clippers, to me, of all three, would make the most sense for Kyrie Irving, but who knows? I mean, he's a very difficult guy to read, and as CJ just said, maybe this is all just about bargaining, and eventually he ends up staying for a little bit longer with Kevin Durant in Brooklyn.
Kyrie and LeBron is the most interesting to the fans, I think. And when you hear Shaq and Kobe in later years talk, when you heard Shaq and Penny talk, I think there's a realization we could have done more. Whatever we did, we could have done more had we been more mature and had a better perspective. And maybe LeBron and Kyrie are both already at that point in their lives where they're thinking, we could have done more. Maybe we can still. That's what's the most intriguing.